And welcome everybody to another episode of the most important conversations around relationships. I'm here with my co-host, Jenna Smith. How are you doing today, Jenna?
Good. Technology is being interesting. I'm good though.
Yeah.
Everyone can relate.
Yeah, if you see some welts on my face today, it's because I went to the dermatologist and they did a number on me.
Fun.
Yeah, it's, so it's too many years in the sun in sunny places. And so I got to stay on top of, things that little blemishes and stuff to make sure they don't become something worse. So I do that often, and I'm kind of an avid dermatology. So there's the advertisement announcement for today. Make sure you go get your skin checked by dermatologists at least once a year.
Of which we don't get paid for. So
yeah, we're not getting paid for it. That's why I'm not telling you which dermatologist to go to. I'm just saying find one. So the public service announcement, I guess, is more accurate. Anyway, you had a topic, Jenna, that you wanted to kind of dig in with today, and I'm happy to do it. I think it's an important one, especially given the nature of what we all are talking about on this show. But why don't you kind of frame it a little bit in terms of your curiosity, and we can kind of just go from there, so that our listeners can kind of track with us.
Yeah, and then I did want to talk about the nature and disconnect because I just had a client call about that. I figured we should talk about our relationship to ontology itself. What is ontology? How does that relate to relationships? Literally it's the philosophy of relating and its states of being. But when I talk to clients, they don't really care how I get results. They're just like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. I like that it's going to get at the root versus, more transformational versus just transactional, which I call glorified babysitting, which is just like, do this, don't do that. But my relationship to it, how I got into it, how you got into it, of applied ontology and pragmatic reasons we apply it also to our self relationship and to our relationships in general. So right. I know, I'm just going to write down the main things that I've brought into relationship that have made relationship way more easy is definitely to look at interpretation, like that ontological principle alone, to look at how am I interpreting this, mixed with psychotherapy, but to really just bring to the conversation how we came about into this logical world that isn't really that known.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing I would say about it that I think is important is that, so we have this, I don't know, I guess it's a view in our society that these kinds of conversations, so talking about ontology, these things that can be relegated to the corner of that's so philosophical, what the heck does it have to do with real life, right? Yeah. Like, why would I spend any time on that? And the conundrum, which is interesting about this, is that it's precisely because we aren't connected ontologically to ourself that we don't want to talk about ontology. So it's like we're in such a world of doing that any conversation about being seems like a waste of time, not practical, not relatable, right? And it's sort of like the experience people have when you talk about things that have a philosophical nature to them is almost, for a lot of people, like their eyes are glazing over, like you've just dropped a bunch of, spreadsheets in front of them and said, interpret this. And they're like, what does this have to do with my life? Right. Mm-hmm. But so I want to acknowledge that right out of the gate, because I think it's important that our viewers and listeners understand that we understand that this is sort of one of those things that you're probably already thinking, why are we talking about this? I just want to know how to meet someone. I just want to be in relationship with someone. I just want to have a great sex life. I just want to have whatever, these things, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yet the irony is that it is precisely because people don't get to the source essence of things that they continue to struggle in the doing, that it's because people don't want to have the conversations about being, which is really all ontology is. When we talk about the word ontology, it sounds really fancy, but what we're really saying is, are you connected to the authentic essence of who you are as a being, or are you just sort of running around through life habituated reacting to all of the conditions in life and just throwing your doing at it. So you're throwing your tools that you have in order to win at this moment of this game, but you don't even ask yourself, why am I playing this stupid game? I mean, is this something I even want to be doing, right? So these bigger questions of who am I directly relate to your success or failure in actually being able to be in relationship with other people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right. And so from that perspective, it's not philosophical and impractical. It's the most practical thing you can do is to sort of begin at the beginning, which is who am I and who does that person or what does that person want? And based on those desires, a whole sequence of things happen. But if you don't ask the question, then you're just in the conditioning that you were taught to be in when you were 5, and you're just still in it.
Yeah. And the thing is, most people are going to need to be brought to that question from a place of discomfort. Like, so what I find with my clients is what I'm doing isn't working anymore, right? Like they're like, not me, but like, or with me, if that happened, that the doing stops working. So the being really good at something, the getting that next job, the like having all the doing stops working. There's something unsatisfying. And then that dissatisfaction is what drives somebody to go and to look into meet you, go, okay, I've done all the things, but I don't have the thing. And then they're frustrated. They could make it mean they're not good enough and they're doing something wrong from that. I call it mind dominance. So most people won't, very few people are going to sit and go, who am I? And what do I really want? Very few in this society.
Yeah. So hence why we have the society we have.
Exactly. Right. So that's why we have a podcast about it. We're like, hey, you're not broken. Nothing's wrong with you. Lots of other things are broken. How do we manage it? But coming back to source creator mode, from an ontological perspective, and how I wanted to ask today, how have you explained ontology to people? I explain it as working on your relationship to reality. Because then you can, like, if you look at your relationship to reality, you can then change your relationship to reality from a place of, if it's all been made up, what do you want to make up? Like, what do you want to create? Now what? If like that Etch-a-Sketch game in the 80s, where you just shake it and it's just like, oh, now what? What would I create from this blank space? Like, that was really compelling for me, from a history of trauma and a history of, just seeing a life that I didn't really want societally for myself, because I did music, because I played in nature, because some aspects of my spirit were online early from interacting with spirit. So those are really common things that people will stay in touch with spirit internally, right? Writing, anything artistic is going to keep you in touch with that source energy. And that's how they all intersect for me. But I explain it to people as like, okay, if you change your relationship to reality, okay, I always get jerks. Men always cheat on me. Let's say that's not actually in my reality, but that is somebody that will be like, oh, that must be true. And then they make it mean, well, I must be deserving of this or whatever on a deeper level. But the only way to change it is to change your relationship to that thing. Oh, men are jerks and they're always going to cheat, right? Like, to get at the like binary code, to actually recode it back to your way of being, which we talked about nature there. But that's how I described it to clients, is if you change your relationship to reality, now your reality ripples out from that new center point of now this is possible. Now these relationships are possible because you're that powerful, and you're just been creating from that conditioned state or from that hurt place. Oh, I'm hurt and I've never really dealt with hurt, but now I'm regurgitating hurt because it's all I know. That people weren't, and the biggest thing I want people to know is they weren't taught how to do this. So to make yourself wrong or bad for not figuring this out sooner is so not something we're talking about. Just like, hey, you've been doing the best you can do with these broken systems and half of the cake recipe to like work on mindset or do breath work or do healing. Like, a lot of people are getting a lot of pieces, but they're not getting to that deep connection to themselves and self-sourcing that we're talking about.
Well, yeah, because they're focused on everything outside of them as
Yeah.
so they're working on the world of effects versus the world of causes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's cause, there's effect. And what most people fail to realize and understand is that they are the cause of the effects that they are experiencing. They may not be, let me be careful with this. So everyone is the cause of the effects that we're all experiencing in the world. So sometimes I'm experiencing the effects that someone else was cause of, and those are entering my domain as well. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not, but here's the thing to pay attention. This comes down to perception. So I always
Mm-hmm.
say that perception is reality. So whatever you are experiencing as your reality, it's true for you, but it is also your perception of it. And your perception is determined by all of your lived life experience and what I call your perceptual filter. So all of
Mm-hmm.
us have developed a perceptual filter. There's way more data that we are experiencing in our day-to-day life, phenomenon, sights, sounds, smells, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that we're not seeing or feeling or experiencing or picking up, because we only pick up that data that is relevant to us. So humans are, first of all, by nature, it's a survival thing, incredibly egocentric. A really good example of this is anyone who's bought a new car, right? So you drive in
Mm-hmm.
your car around, let's say you have a Volkswagen, you're driving your Volkswagen and you're like, gee, I really think I need to get a new car. So you put the effort in, maybe you got a new job or something, you're getting that Mercedes finally, right? So you go, you get the Mercedes and you're driving home, and all you see is your Mercedes that you just bought on the street everywhere. It's like, oh my gosh, like, did I just buy car of the year? Like, is everyone buying this car? Now, you
Mm-hmm.
never noticed the Mercedes when you were driving the Volkswagen. It wasn't a thing. It was always there, but it was data that your brain subconsciously blocked out because it wasn't relevant to you. You drive a Volkswagen. You don't drive a Mercedes. Why would you notice it? Now that you have
Mm-hmm.
a Mercedes, you see your Mercedes everywhere. That's just a
Mm-hmm.
small example of how we see what we are in the world.
Yeah.
And so that holds true with relationships. It holds true with everything that we engage with. I'm a big fan of aphorisms because they're a really powerful way to illustrate a point. And
Yeah.
I was talking to an investment banker friend of mine, and I only say investment banker friend for the specific purpose of letting you know that this is a guy who's winning at the game. Like, he's doing very
Mm-hmm.
well for himself. He's winning at the conditions of, the game of our world, and yet he's dealing with some traumatic, dramatic, personal stuff, personal relationship stuff. And so I'm not going to go into it, but we were talking about it, and he was like, I don't understand. Like, me and my wife, this was, how we used to be, but now I'm having, these other experiences, which cause me to think, is this the relationship I want to be in? And, there's all these sorts of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, look, it's really simple. I said, and this is the aphorism: birds of a feather flock together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we attract what we are. So
Mm-hmm.
if people are in relationship or continuing to find themselves dating people or being in relationships with the same person,
Mm-hmm.
same type of person, the thing to look at is not them. That's the world of effects. The thing
Mm-hmm.
to look at is you. It's like your
Yeah.
car. You're seeing what you are. You're bringing into your experience what you are, because it's all you can see. As soon as you change your perceptual filter,
Mm-hmm.
as soon as you change yourself, you will stop. This isn't magic. It's not like you're attracting these men or women. They're the only men or women you're seeing, like your
Mm-hmm.
car, because you're seeing you. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
why we continually find ourselves in the same situations. The thing to change is not the world of effects. It's not about getting better at crafting that message or saying the right words on the phone, those are stupid things that aren't getting to the source of anything.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to change anything in your life, including your relationships and the nature of them, you've got to
Mm-hmm.
change yourself. You have to
Mm-hmm.
change what you're letting in. That's the
Yeah.
world of ontology.
And it's a big hop. I was working with an executive and she started working with me from a referral. So she still didn't understand. She thought I was an executive coach and therapist, but she wanted the promotion. She wanted the promotion. She wanted the promotion. So can you look at my LinkedIn? She's sending me all this stuff. And I was like, none of this matters. Let's work on this inner mechanics. And from my perspective, from a therapy training, old stuff that isn't processed, that's keeping you from experiencing a new reality, because they go together as well. And so we did all that stuff, and she just trusted me enough to do it. Ends up getting the promotion, and through a series of events, through being in the right place at the right time, through having that conversation with that person you sit beside, like, it can look like magic, but it really is. Your relationship to reality is now shifted such that you can receive, and I use the word participate in that reality versus fight for it and manufacture an identity to create it. And that's why all that feels so exhausting and not fulfilling, is that those systems that a lot of societal metrics people work from stop being fulfilling. Like the idea of like, okay, I deserve this job and I'm good at this job. And it's not like affirmations. It's just a sense of knowing if it's for you, if you're lit up by it, if you see yourself there, like that's data. Like we look at data, right? We use that language too to say that's for me. But then it's can I do this? Oh my gosh, I'm a woman of color. I don't belong there. I'm not a leadership role. Okay. Well, then, yeah. Guys like Chad, Tuesday named Chad, they're going to get the job. I'm just joking. It's such like a white guy name. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like,
even though it's an African country, I've always wondered about that.
That's so true. But we have to make, and that's the thing, is you can make fun of stuff like this because it's just funny. I'm like, So anyway, she was doing all the things to get all the things, and they weren't working. And then it was like, okay, but let's free up the energy so that you can receive the reality that's already trying to talk to you through that yearning, through that wanting. Oh, I want to have a deep, committed relationship. Okay, cool. Now from that wanting, let's start participating with reality in that way. Where do you do
as a creator?
As a creator. And the cool thing is you don't have to go looking for it. It'll come to you. The right book, this podcast, in a lot of cases, I will come into someone's life to show them the thing. They will attract me to help them get to the thing. They will attract you to help them clear up the thing. So,
this is where I want to interject one thing, though, because I think that The Secret, the movie The Secret, did a lot of damage to this idea of manifestation, which is very popular. And this whole idea of I've attracted this into my life. I'm reframing it these days, and I want to sort of see what you think about this. So I'm saying, no, you're not attracting anything. It's always already there.
Yes,
you just don't see it. Right? So this isn't like something wasn't there and now it's attracted to me. No, it was there the whole time. You just didn't see it. Like the Mercedes on the road, they've always been there. You just didn't see it. So this whole idea of I manifested is kind of BS, actually. I mean, I want to kind of poke a hole in that, because you're not going to be able to sit in the basement of your house and think, okay, I'm going to envision and attract the man or woman of my dreams, and they're going to knock on your door. It's not going to happen. It's just never going to happen. Right. So let's, I'm advocating for people like, stop with the manifestation crap. It doesn't work that way. It's not magic. You're simply shifting your perceptual field so you can see things you currently aren't seeing. They're already always there. You just don't notice them because we only see who we are. So this is why the philosophical stuff we're talking about here around ontology and the nature of being is so practical, because as soon as you change the way you see things, you will see different things. And those things are new opportunities, new people, new experiences that you can then choose to integrate into your reality as part of the new thing you're creating, or not. It's up to you. But, we only attract what we are. Birds of a feather flock together. There's no such thing as manifestation. There's only seeing what you didn't see before, but it's there.
Yeah.
There's like millions of realities, millions.
Millions
So
of
whichever one
simultaneous
you're in
realities
today,
now.
yeah, happening right now, like this whole sort of parallel universe thing, that's actually already happening because we're already in our own, universe. And when we talk, so why I say that, our organization, the most important conversations, the reason that's so important is because human beings socially construct and reconstruct together their realities through conversation, because I'm sharing my perceptual worldview with you, you're sharing yours with me. We're seeing where your perception aligns with my perception and where it doesn't. Maybe we can learn new things from each other. Maybe there's things about your perception. So this is the thing. How crazy is it that we actually make other people wrong and actually judge other people, and in extreme cases like war,
kill them,
kill people because they're perceiving a different part of reality than we are. It's just a perception thing. There's no objective reality where you're right, I'm wrong. This is all crap.
It's all crap. It's so exhausting. So the client friends from Palestine. So we're talking about all the things, right? And just like how can you be a person who can hold space for these two dualities happening simultaneously? Because it's here. It is what's happening. It is what we're collectively witnessing because we continue to want things to be our way. And so when we go from control to curiosity, we're in relationship.
That's
if you're
right.
trying to control, that's not a relationship.
No.
Right? Like that's how a lot of people do relationship though. He needs to be 6 foot, blah, 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 trust fund. Okay. What are you doing? Are you, what are you bringing to the table? Like, who are you being? Not in a conditional worth sense, but like, who are you bringing? Like, who are you being that is going to attract a certain type of person that is a match for you? And then this is what brings us to our whole podcast of like, who are you being so that the current relationship you're in can be transformed and you could relate better, or you're relating better to yourself so you can go into, all of the things. But this is the beginning of it. But anyway, this is kind of cool. You were talking about, so we're talking about ontology and how we relate to reality to create reality and participate with reality and in the multi-dimensional, all of the things happening right now that we could participate with, which is actually really exciting rather than overwhelming. It's like, okay, I woke up.
I think so.
Didn't get a lot of sleep. There's a reality where today sucks. There's a today. I'm gonna be blah, blah, blah. Like, but I'm like, no. What am I? This is when you got to like turn up the dial on your tools and go, who am I going to be today? How's this going to go? And choose that with conviction. And some people do this naturally, which I think is really cool too. They're like, oh yeah, I do that. I'm like, yeah, it's your nature. So we have these like tools and philosophies, but then we have our nature. So is it true that ontology talks about your inherent nature and like this whole like mammal thing? Like I haven't actually done enough study on it because my work with shamanic philosophy and working with healers has brought me into that world of nature and oneness and all of that kind of stuff. And then I applied ontology. But does ontology itself talk about your true nature as well?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that when you get really into the heart of the underpinning philosophy, when you're talking about your true nature, you're talking about the source essence of your being. So it's like the beginning of the whole ontological conversation. But I don't just mean your nature. So like, so there's this. I don't want to go into too much of a sort of a teaching thing, so I'm trying to cut it right to the chase here. So there was this moment in history where we started. It was when we actually started to write in language. Okay. So prior to that, we had language that was, some anthropologists think music was the first language, and then based on music and rhythm and beats and then we started to vocalize over top of it, and this became how we developed language and the ability to communicate with one another. And then that led to a whole history of many thousands of years where we were in oral traditions. So we passed along what it meant to be human in this world to our children and to our communities, largely through storytelling. It was the moment where we wrote down we had not even pictographs, but an alphabet, right? So the alphabet, which is a Semitic writing system, was then adopted by the Greeks. And it used to be that our writing systems related to nature. So, like, here's an interesting thing that I was researching. So the word in Hebrew for water is mem.
Mm.
Now, the symbol for water in Hebrew is what we would call the letter M, and it looks like waves. So see, we used to relate to ourselves and the world, even through our communication, where everything was collapsed on each other. So if we were talking about water, we didn't write WATER, that's the alphabet. We just had this symbol that looked like waves, and we're like, oh yeah, that's water. That's what water looks like.
And that makes sense, right? There's like a unity of like, yep.
Right.
This matches this.
Yeah. So I know this might be a little boring, but just track with me for a sec, because it was quite powerful once I kind of looked into all this. So then we go to an alphabet, which is disassociated from ourselves and the natural environment. So in the English language, for example, WATER, to look at those symbols visually, you would not know what the hell that was. Right? You have to be told the meaning of these 5 letters is that thing out in the ocean. So you have to symbolically relate to something because it's not self-evident, right?
No. Yeah.
At that moment, we became disassociated from nature. At that moment in time, we started the human awareness and consciousness fractured, and we developed an ego. An identity that was a symbolic representation of who we wanted to be, and we could actually back it up with language and how we told stories about ourselves and all of this stuff. So it was at that moment where our being and our doing separated. Right. Okay, so animals, if you think, we call it instinct. Animals, they're not sitting around thinking, what am I going to do today? This isn't even a thought. Animals get up and they just be and do. And it's all wrapped into one thing. You cannot separate the doing of a deer from the being of a deer. They're the same thing, right? No. So then I asked myself, well, why is it different for humans? And it's precisely because we have this symbolic ability to imagine, to assign meaning to things that don't otherwise have meaning. Like, we're meaning-making machines, right? So all of that has to do with ontology, because we do it with ourselves. But the problem is we're disconnected from our own innate nature. So we talk about what is my nature. Another way of saying that is, what is instinctual for me? What is natural for me? Who am I naturally as a being? And what would that being go do if I didn't have these things separated? This is why people live separated lives. They're being one way privately in their internal world, and they're doing something totally different out in the world in order to gain validation, approval, or whatever. And it makes it so complicated. So I'm actually advocating for a simplification of how we relate to ourselves and others. Figure out who you are, connect to your naturalness, your innate nature, and just be that. Just be that.
Yep. That's what connects us. Like you and I, we're both having that same conversation, and we're getting there from different ways, but it's still the same way, because it's like, it's already who you are. I took care of a baby squirrel, and I watched it. Yeah.
You're one of those people. I see these Instagram, which are fascinating to me. So now I want to hear all about
You're
this.
one of those people. I want to know what people I am.
the squirrel adopter people. I'm like, who does this? And you do it. And I didn't. So you've got to tell me about this, because do they make good pets? I mean, they look like they make great pets.
So I eventually got it to a wildlife center anyway, but like, I know, so there's this is a good pet. There's humans being silly. And not actually knowing nature and all that. So my dad used to rehabilitate small animals. So we had owls and we had squirrels until they were good. And then we would release them and not have them bond with us too much, so that they could go and be back in nature again. So I had some skills. So I saw this little squirrel. It usually you shouldn't touch them. You should, but it was definitely abandoned. And when it gets really cold, their mom can't smell them anyways. But this is stuff people aren't going to know naturally. Again, it's not in our world instinctually.
It used to be. It
used to be, right? Like, we're relating to all of these other beings, right? So I intuitively scooped it up in my, just took off my vest, scooped it up, put it away from my cats and just was like, don't know what I'm going to do now. But I used my own intuition intersecting with it. But here was the point. Also, it's also a cool story. I was a little baby squirrel, so his little eyes were closed still. And then the next day the one eye was open. The next day both eyes were open. And to watch it grow so fast and just become this little being. But what was so cool was it didn't have its little squirrel mom. It learned how to, once I started to get it on, this was in the 10 days, 2 weeks on nuts instead of just the formula I was giving it, which also took a lot of research. It would go hide the nut. So it'd get the nut
instinctively
in the little sheet thing. And then I would go give it its formula the next feeding time. It would go and find its nut and eat its nut because it was feeding time.
Right.
And I was just like, this is so freaking cool. And then I'm seeing it start to just jump. So it would just be solid. And then it would just start learning. It started to learn how to jump on its own. And it was just so cool to watch life emerge unencumbered.
Yeah. And where does that programming come from, right?
And this is what always made more sense to me. It was there's a place where you're always connected, which I learned from the shamanic lineage.
Yeah.
Versus the Roman Catholic, where this dude is going to tell you what to do and do it. Now, I do love things in the Bible, and I do think many rivers are the same ocean, but the idea of I'm connected to source and I can talk to it through language of spirit, which is more symbol, an emergence of knowing versus the computing of, I'm having thought. Now this thought, well, let me check my data bank. The thing about your left cognitive mind, it only knows what has been.
That's right.
Your being is it's the internet beyond the internet, right? Because it can go and access what you need to know right here, right now for where your unique nature is going. And that is just such a much more fun way to live too. Because you're not frantically hoping it's going to work out and wondering if you're worthy. And there's if I'm a squirrel, I'm going to know how to bury the nut, and I'm going to know how to go find the nut. And I'm going to trust that intrinsic wisdom more than the noise. And I'm going to live from there more. And that's how I've created a 6-figure business with ease. It's kind of part-time with referrals, because I'm I want to do that life. And it happened to work for me because it was my nature. So many people are forcing themselves to be something that isn't who they really are. And now they're exhausted and they're wondering why they're not happy and fulfilled. And so this is our whole conversation. But anyway, that's the squirrel, watching nature emerge from nothingness.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing about the squirrel in your example. It never has the inner talk of, should I trust my instincts or not? And what are my instincts? This is not an internal dialogue, right? No. So this is what I'm saying when I mean that animals, their being and their doing is completely collapsed into a single thing. And there's no separation, right? Humans, it's because of our ability to think and self-reflect and have self-awareness. So there's all kinds of great things that provides us, the ability to look at the world that, we can create. I mean, it allows us to be creators. Animals aren't creators.
Yeah, they don't have imagination and the ability to know themselves.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, there's a few, some people say dolphins or, there's a couple mammals, but that do have self-awareness, but that's rare. And so most animals, which you're dealing with, are where the being and the doing is collapsed. So the thing that creates the schism for human beings and the challenge for humans is that we're having almost at least two dialogues within our mind. There's my instinct and my naturalness and my nature of what I would just do naturally. But what I would do naturally might be looked down upon by society. It might be illegal, which, by the way, those laws have changed. I was, they still have laws in Alabama that you shouldn't have sex with goats. And I'm like, we really need these laws? I mean, is this actually something we need on the books here? Really?
I think it's still illegal to be a witch in my county as well. I think it's still actually in the books. Like, yeah.
So this, just as a total side note, one of the things we can do to reform our political system is start voting in politicians who are going to get rid of laws, not add more. Like, we need actually a reframe on the whole political thing. Let's get rid of a lot of this stuff. But anyway, so, we have my naturalness, I'm always in this sort of inner dialogue of, can I, should I, will I be accepted? Will I be, and then, so we're often kind of not technically schizophrenic, but we're living that way. We have this sort of one experience out there, right? And then we have the inner experience. And where those two things don't line up is where we experience tension, stress, anxiety, friction. And when you do that every single day, all day long, it's going to wear on you. Yeah.
And then now the tension and stress is in your own head. You don't even have the argument. You're having it in your own head. I call it, like, I like to reverse worry. So people worry to prepare for a future. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be late to work. What's my excuse? And then they're running this, like, it hasn't even happened yet. And they're freaking out.
Happened yet. Yeah. Yeah.
That's worrying. And I like to reverse worry. I'm like, oh, what if I'm on time? Like, now if we're going to use our creative faculties, which most people use for worry and most people use for fear and not looking dumb or whatever, might as well use them again in a creative way. But that takes the reconditioning. Like, we're reconditioning people back to their true nature, which is so funny. It's like, okay, this is already you. My job's easy because it's already done. Like, you're already a mind with a body and a soul. And like, I found with ontology, though, like, I found with like the landmark line of things, like landmark forum is sort of the popular, how most people have access to ontology, I would say. But there's a lot of flaws in it, with like the lack of connection to nature, the lack of connection to emotional.
It's not complete. It's not a complete ontology.
Yeah. So that I found a lot of problem with. But then really in its highest form, it's like, okay, I can be in an imaginative state, but at the same time participating with our co-created reality with everybody else. And that creates harmony. And that actually makes, I was talking to somebody last night who's in improv, and we were talking about improv and life, of being curious, of participating, of not being in a state of control and letting things unfold together. So it's easy to control your little universe inside of yourself. And that's what a lot of people in our society have done. And then they're wondering why they're feeling separate. But when you could start to extend that out, first starting with your self relationship, to be letting things emerge together, we're going to naturally, people will leave that feeling, oh, I feel really good. Why? Because that's your nature telling you, drink water, go to sleep. Like it's actually working with you for you is the language I use with people. Like tune into the thing that's working with you for you. And even if they haven't read a book about it, some part of them goes, yep, that makes sense. That there's a part of me that's working with me for me.
Right.
And let me tune into that and make decisions from there, versus you should eat broccoli because it has this and this and this, and you can do both. But, we are in this society. And so I just want to add that we're not creating even more separation, that because we're in this society, the infinite intelligence of everything has rejigged. And so we will show up on time for the meeting, or we will wear the business thing we need. Like, we're going to do the things we need to do, but we're not going to be bound to them, bound to the identity of that executive, or I have to always be on time because I am a responsible person. Like, we're going to naturally want to have harmony and do things in alignment with our societal structure and be our nature. Like, I just want to say, like, there's like this caveman in the woods thing. I live in the woods. It's sort of where my nature brought me through synchronicity, or however we would want to see that, like through life going, hey, you need to be here now in order to be your fullest expression. Life will start
Yeah.
participating with you to create those conditions, but the conditions will still match what our society has been creating, because you can't just, not everyone can live in the woods and work online. Like we all have to work with the systems that we're in. But the realm of creator, the realm of spirit, I would call that, has aligned it so that you can be who you are in your job, creating money for your kids, for your this. You don't have to abandon all the stuff. You just start weaving this in and then watch what happens. I feel like that was important.
Sure.
Because people
Yeah,
are
I
not
think
going to separate, right?
Yeah, no, I think that is important. I do want to address, however, that there's one of the biggest ways, one of the most effective ways for people to begin to to walk the path of ontology, to connect to their innate nature. And you may not believe what I'm about to say right now, and might be because of conditioning, but my encouragement and my invitation to listeners and watchers is to accept it and try it on and
Right.
see what happens. So this whole thing of, people need to whatever, blah, blah, blah. Nobody needs to do anything. So we need to start to be careful with our language, because if we're in a symbolic relationship to this reality that we are co-creators of without realizing it, in most cases, people just do it by default. So if you accept that premise, then, and this is why Immanuel Kant said, to operate as though every thought and word from your mouth becomes universal law. So to treat it with such reverence, to treat each thought and each word as though you are making a creative declaration of this will be. When I say I need to do something, the programming in my mind reinforces that I am not at choice, that I don't have the ability to assert my naturalness onto the world, because these external circumstances and conditions are requiring me and I need to obey, right?
Yeah.
So the first flip for people is to realize that, no, you're choosing everything in your life. You may not you may not think that you chose it consciously or proactively in the past that brought you to this moment. But at this moment in time now, listening to this podcast, I'm basically letting you know that everything in your life going forward is a choice. Now, if you accept that premise, what will you choose your life to look like? This, to your point, it doesn't mean they have to abandon their job and all of that, but it also doesn't mean that they don't need to.
Right. But that it will happen incrementally and naturally. So there's a saying in therapy that you can only move as fast as your slowest parts can go.
Sure.
And so we're in a go get it done tomorrow. So the rhythm of how creation is going to roll out is going to be in alignment to the highest expression of you. Like, is that going to create anxiety for you? Is that going to displace you? No, because it's intelligence itself co-creating with you. Like, if you want to see it from that language, but that I use that language because we need to see things as separate. It's like, no, you're starting to make different choices in alignment with your being. Life is going to roll out in an aligned way. Now, sometimes there's breakdowns.
Sure.
Often there's breakdowns. But the resources to meet the challenge arrive with the breakdown, because you're recreating something, and I know you talk about that too, but to start to use language as a creator, but also to chill out. It's not all on you. It's the squirrel knows where to dig the hole. Like, to remember that your left brain isn't responsible. The you who you think you are, the thinker you, isn't going to make this all happen. It's actually this bigger part of you that's going to make it all happen.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the trust of self part. So first of all, recognize that everything as a play on the word, your ability to respond, your responsibility, right? Your ability to respond begins with realizing that everything in your life going forward is a choice. You don't need to go to the job you have right now. You're choosing to. Now that's a powerful reframe, because now you're like, okay, so if I'm choosing this, is this the job I would choose? Now that doesn't mean you're going to quit it tomorrow, but it might mean
start the questions.
This is not the job. to say I need to go to this job implies I have no choice, in which case I just put my naturalness in the background and I ignore it and I suppress it. Well, that's not going to work very well. Well, they're going to end up in a psychotherapist's office pretty quick, because that naturalness is going to come through you, whether you like it or not. And it's not going to be pretty if you continue to resist it, bury it, suppress it, and ignore it. So putting yourself linguistically in a place of choice and saying, I choose this job and I am on the exploration of what else might I choose now that I'm connecting to my naturalness. It might be 6 months, it might be a year, where you finally, through trust of self, like, you know what, I'm quitting this job and I'm going to go do this other thing that I've been working on the side, and I've got it developed to a place where I now feel confidence in moving forward with it, right? So approaching life from a place of choice, suddenly, again, it's a perceptual filter thing. If I say I need, my filter is this small. If I say I choose, this is one choice, this is a choice, all these choices suddenly emerge. I didn't see them before, because before I related to the world of I need to. Now I'm choosing to. And when I step forward into choosing, I can then evaluate what aligns with my naturalness from a more authentic place, as opposed to suppressing it.
Yeah. I give people an exercise to be a self-anthropologist.
Yeah.
If you could wake up anytime, when would you wake up? If you just like you're watching those nature shows where they're like, the alligator gets out and then it does this and then it does that. Like, with that level of curiosity, just notice what you would do in that space and what emerges from that space, and just continue to notice and gather data of like who you are in the world and how you would naturally operate, like my business. I don't people before 11 for the most part, because I don't want to. And it's just worked that whether it's time zones or this or that, I haven't had to like make it work. The clients I get come at that time, even if it's 6 a.m. in their time zone.
So this is a really cool little example that you just brought up. Let's riff with it for a second, right? So some people might say to you, Jenna, why don't you people before 11, right? So the question why assumes that there's some rational answer that will satisfy my inquiry. Like I need to know, right? Now, so I was talking to someone the other day about this. I said, there is absolutely nothing that you do in your life that is rational. And like, what are you talking about? Like this, I said, it's all bullshit.
Right.
The reason Jenna doesn't people before 11 is because she doesn't choose to people before 11. That's your answer.
Yeah. My answer was, I don't want to.
Exactly. Which is the same as saying I choose not to.
Exactly.
Right? It's the same thing. So that's, people don't like that, because they're like, wait a minute, I've got the chart of acceptable answers here. That's not on it.
Yeah.
And it makes people really uncomfortable. But how powerful is that for you?
It's awesome, because one, I'm working in alignment with my nature. So if I want to work on music in the morning, I'm filling the space with answers, or I do the work, or I do work, or I'm a very in tune, energetic person. Sometimes I just don't sleep at night. And so I actually need the morning to roll into the world, blah, 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 blah. It's just what works for me. It's mostly because I don't want to, But what's cool is to be the example and say, I didn't know it was going to work. Like when I first did my CEO schedule, whatever, like I made a week. If I could create my work week, what would it look like? Started with that imagination. It started with, this doesn't exist yet. What if it did? What if Monday, like an actual calendar, Monday, okay, client here, meeting here, podcast here, blah, blah, blah. And it started with that. And then I thought, I don't know how I'm going to meet clients that are going to meet that. Or, what if this time? Nah, like that's all the blah, blah, blah in your head. So then I just kept participating with creation. And what if it did? And how would that look? And same thing with pricing in my company. Like, this pricing will allow me to do this and this and this. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to price it at that. I wonder if people are going to buy it. Oh, they did. Like, so to be the example is really fun, because in my world with the coaching industry, it's become really noisy and really weird and make 10 people. It's like so much noise. I'm doing it from a place of participating with creation and not salesy. It's like, if you want to do the thing, do the thing. If you're called to work with me, work with me. You're going to know it's time, because that's how I do.
It's the only way it's going to work though, for people.
And also that.
Actually, yeah.
Because
No, but
I don't
it's
babysit
just
clients. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's like if people, and this is the norm, are frankly through dark marketing manipulated into
Yes.
buying something that
Will
isn't
fix their
connecting to
problem.
them. Yeah. And isn't connecting them at a deep level, but they feel compelled for all these other reasons. This is where the reason
sold
thing
on it. Yeah.
right? They're never going to see it through. They're never going to implement it. They're never going to get the value from it. And then it just gives people like you and I, who are committed to working with people who are ready, internally, integrated in themselves, ready to go down this path. It gives us, this uphill battle, because it's like, well, how are you different? You're just, so, but I mean, this whole thing of let's bring it back to relationships for a second. So, one of the challenges that a lot of people in relationships struggle with is with the people that are in relationship, whether they're dating or they're in a long-term relationship or whatever it is we seem to operate sort of subconsciously on this belief that people owe us a rational answer or reason for their behavior. Right. And so, we're focused on the other. So we're focused on them. Why didn't you call me at this time? Why didn't you text when you said you were going to text? Why didn't you, and we're looking for reasons. Know that all these reasons are bullshit. They're societally crafted furniture and decorations to obfuscate the real reason. There's only one, and it's not rational, because I chose to or I chose not,
or not.
to. That's
it. Yeah. And that's what you got to watch for in a relationship is the data. So I collect data, and my mom was like, isn't that was just last night? She's like, isn't that controlling? Isn't that controlling? I was like, I'm watching when he's calling. I'm watching how he's texting. I'm watching if I share something, does he respond to it? Does he look at it? I'm not controlling. And then I'm only sharing parts of myself according to the level of intimacy we're at. So it's a participation and co-creation. So my point of this is, what I said to him last night was, when people show you who they are, pay attention. Like,
believe them.
Someone isn't showing up for me, if someone is filling space with their own blah, 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 and they're never asking how my day is, they're showing me who they are.
Yeah.
They're just like, hey, this is me, because you're interfacing with me. This is what you get when you get me. If I'm like, oh, they had a hard day and doo-ba-doo, blah, 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 and I abandoned myself, which is, people are loving psychology terms now, and make up excuses, rational lies. Oh, weird. I wonder why that didn't work out 3 months later. Like, you could find out a lot in the beginning by just paying attention without attaching something to it. Oh, that's right. He's emotionally unavailable. Oh, he's just, does this work for me?
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, I still like talking to him. I call it resubscribing, like Netflix. Like, I want to talk to this person, and it's not objectifying the person. It's just, does this continue to work for me? And that will then work for that other person. But thanks for showing me who you are is one of my favorite relationship things, because it's so clean. I'm just like, what am I? So cool. And you might emotionally grieve that, whatever, how long you've been talking. But anyway, in relationships, watching how people show up, how they're relating to reality, they will show you everything. They will show you everything. And then timing. Right. So maybe it's the right person at the wrong time, which means it's the wrong person. But the tuning into yourself, paying attention, knowing yourself, does that work for me? Do I want somebody to text me? My other friend Jeanette's like, oh, I don't really text people back right away. Like, then she's making herself wrong or bad, because maybe she should text more. And I'm like, no, you do you. You'll find someone who works for you.
That's right.
Don't change who you are. Yeah. If I say something really personal, I kind of want them to reply back. If I'm like, blah, blah, I found pink shoes, I don't care. Like, you don't get back to me, I won't be like, oh, but if I said something, I would.
But how many people would be like, they didn't respond about my pink shoes? I mean, they don't care. I'm like,
they might really care. But I honestly, in my world of helping people with dating, the texting back and when people text back is a big deal. And with the one woman who was like this real estate, like, businesswoman, she's like, oh, he didn't text me back within 3 hours. And I'm like, do you want someone who's checking their phone? Like, who do you want to be with? Do you want to be with someone who's out and about doing things, living life? Or do you want someone who's constantly on their phone? And then she's like,
Well,
Like,
yeah, because if he was with her at a restaurant or something and his text was flying and he's just picking it up and, oh, I got to be on top of it, got to be on top. She'd be like, this is the stupidest freaking date ever. Like, what are we hearing?
exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. So these things that we can do with dating and relationships is like, okay, some part of me thinks I need them to text right away. Why? Cool. Because then they like me. Just watch for if they like you. Do they show up? Do they come
Yeah.
back? Do they listen to what food you liked? Like they'll show you. It's not rocket science. But
well, this is a being-based approach to relationships. What you're talking about is, but again, and let's bring it all home, because I know we went on this sort of Semitic alphabet journey and everything. But guys, it's just like, here's why this matters. Because it was that moment that we othered our experience with life in this symbolic way. And then that's where reason was born. Reason is we tend to, by default, just accept that. When we even use it as a pejorative, it's like, oh, you're not being rational, as though that's the only way to be. Yeah, reasonable. You go to the East, you go to India, you go to parts of Asia, reason is not part of their historical lineage. They don't, they will do things to Westerners that are irrational all the time. And it drives Westerners crazy because they're like, why would you do that? And they're like,
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but from their perspective, we talked about perception as reality. Reason is not part of the calculus. It doesn't need to mathematically line up and make sense to anybody, right? But it was at that moment in the Western world where this all started. And so how does it affect you on your day-to-day? It's exactly what we're talking about here in relationship. It affects you in your day-to-day and how you judge people and your expectations of people. Because you expect it to make sense. You expect it to be reasonable. But the whole thing is this symbolic world that actually isn't real at all. This is also a creation of ours, right?
Yeah.
So the truth is, your reasons just don't matter. And you know what? If people stop talking about their reasons, do you know how little there would be to actually talk about in a conversation? Because a lot of our conversations are rationalizing our experience or rationalizing our behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually very boring. But yeah, your conversations become small and clean. It's like, oh, I did this. Cool. Was it fun? Like, was it like, how was the experience? I think my friends talk about experience more than they do, this is why, and this is this, unless they feel the need to do that. But I find
look at this. It got caught in
the common conversation is complaining and reason. No, which I would call noise. It's just like blah, 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 blah. And I don't even have ears for it anymore. I'm like, that is so boring. Like nothing's even, there's no substance there. It's just blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's different types of conversations we can have in relationships with people. We can have reasoned conversations, which is where we're talking about the rationality or irrationality of our experience. There's phenomenological conversation we can have, which is basically talking about the phenomenon of our life. I had a shower today. I ate this for lunch, right? Which is also equally pointless when you really think about it. I mean, let's just be honest, but it's how
it's
it
a
really
story.
is.
I'm taking you on the journey. I mean, I had one guy explain the most boring factual things of his day. And I'm like, why are you even just, that's what his brain was. That's just how his brain is. And he didn't know how to show up as a person. He only knew how to show up as a thinker, which again, information for me to go, noted.
Yeah.
Got it.
But you realize like the self-awareness that you're bringing to this, though, that's what we're inviting people to start to get curious about. You can have that level of self-awareness and you can develop those observation skills to be able to take in from the external reality the beingness of things, the beingness of people, the beingness of life's experience, and forget what they say. I don't even listen to what people say anymore. I know that whatever people are saying to me is, for the most part, some sort of conditioned garbage that they picked up somewhere, right? When we do, so we have this process when we work with companies called Design Shop. And what's interesting about Design Shop is it's a 12-hour, 3-day session. And the first 4 hours of every day, we know, I won't say it's entirely useless because there's a utility in allowing people to get the conditioned answers and responses out of their system. So that has to happen before we, it's like, but at the end of 4 hours, typically human brains are sort of exhausted. And so at the end of this 4 hours, you kind of get this like, well, I already told you all the answers I have. And it's like, we're not looking for your answers. We're actually wanting to get rid of your answers because the objective of a design shop is creativity. It's to create something that doesn't exist yet. So your answers, which exist, are irrelevant to us. In a way, right? Now, there might be some sprinklings of insight that we can go back to your answers and integrate back in or whatever. Like that's why I say it's not totally useless, but we have to exhaust that. And so I think about like, it's, if you're going to spend 4 hours with someone, you're at a level of intimacy where they're going to, right? So, but if you're just on a date for 30, an hour or an hour and a half or something like that, you're still well within their, I got answers. And, it's like, anyway, I was going to make a joke about it, keep the answers out there. I want to know who you are. So what you have learned to do, and I think what you're trying to help, people that you work with do, is how to listen from a different place. It's like, don't listen to the answers, listen to their being, listen to how they show up, because the answers are just conditioned stuff.
And how it makes you feel. Oh, that was boring. Oh, that was really cool. That was really invigorating. We're a match here. We, to me, a relationship is two people being themselves together. And you have to know who you are in the beginning of that equation and still be curious about it. Cause sometimes I'm like, oh, that was surprisingly fun. Like, I didn't know I'd like that. And also, I knew I wouldn't like that, but I tried it anyway. I chose it. But to let it be more, and I had replied to this guy on Instagram that was like, if you're not dating to meet the person, then you're wasting time. And I was like, now I've learned like so much about myself.
What if you're just learning?
I was like, well, I get it if you're just constantly dating and on this like hamster wheel of whatever, but I was like, no, you got to learn more about yourself through, like, you can't, I was calling it master relate. You can't like relate on your own and get better at relating on your own. Like you have to
exactly.
to others. You know what I mean? That's the plan of words. But
by definition.
Yes, exactly. So I was like, we can't like, so I was sitting in my cottage all alone in the woods and, like there's a town that's 8,000 people. It's like, okay, not a lot of people to date. But once I got curious and I changed the metrics to be, okay, I want to go have fun. I want to go have some more companionship. It's not going to be like, he has to be this and this and this and this. Suddenly now everything became much more alive because it was from a place of curiosity and what's here. And if I'm here, someone else is here. So I do invite people into a more curious relationship with dating. And since then I've told my friends so many little pieces of advice, not telling them what to do, just saying, oh, what if you had more fun? What if it wasn't about whether they text you back, but it's about who you become in the process? Like, what if you change how you see it? So anyway, the whole relating to and with dating. And then I also work with people that are in marriages and, so there's like a lot, like once we can get these pieces that you and I are talking about, and we're going to continue to bring more information and actual tools to, it's just more fun. You don't need someone else to be a certain way for you to be okay. Like that, it just makes for happier humans. It's like the squirrel.
Well, and life shifts from obligation to playfulness.
Yeah.
Which is key, right? So because play is creativity in action.
Yeah.
And when we're in a play state, we drop into this experience of flow. Like if you ask a soccer player when they're on the pitch and they're actually playing the game, they're not thinking about dinner later. They're not thinking about, they're so just in this moment and their whole being is enraptured. And you can live life that way. You can live life from a place of playfulness that allows you to be in this moment, wholly fully, your emotions are activated, your senses are activated. And that's just a much more alive place to be, which very
Alive.
few people, get to experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll wrap it up. But there was a shaman I worked with from Zimbabwe named Mandaza Kandemwa, and you can YouTube him. There's some cool talks he has online. And when I went to one of his lectures, which, I do this because it wasn't like, I'm going to talk about this. Like it was an emergence of, I was watching these soccer players and he was saying, be the soccer ball and the soccer player. Like he was talking about this. Then he was like playing on the piano and he's like, okay, there's the piano and then there's me at the piano. Like he was just kind of like jamming. And by him being him, we're in training with his consciousness.
Sure.
The ability to look at the world in relationship to all of these moving parts in order to be incredibly present. So at the end of the day, it's presence, the ability to use our humanness and our beingness to be present to our experience. And then that's much more fun. It's really the sales pitch. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna end there, but pick up there on our next conversation around presence, because I think
Cool.
there's a great little example that I want to start with that'll really help land that for people. Well, in closing, I just want to encourage everybody. My last words, and I'll turn it over to you, Jenna, for final words. But to consider how much of your life, and your relationships included, since that's what this podcast is primarily focused on, is a consequence of your choice versus a consequence of you feeling compelled or sort of have to, whatever it is in your life. And just explore that and get curious about that. And realize that everything in your life is your creation. You're either creating it by default or by design. If you choose to do it by design, then that's a different path than if you're just going to kind of keep going by default. And Jenna, to your point, you don't have to sort of blow up your life and quit everything once you gain this realization. It's more of an unfolding and an evolving. So the more that you drop into ontological awareness about your being, who are you as your being, what's natural for you, what's your nature, and the more you start choosing to live from that place, you'll start seeing different things. Nothing's going to show up magically. It's already there. You're just not seeing it. And because you're seeing different things, you'll have different choices than you have now. And in those moments, you might then reflect, gee, this thing I'm doing in my life is not really connected to my naturalness. I never noticed this before. Now I see this, and now you have the option to make a choice. So sort of the unfolding of this can take years, but it can become a very fun journey, and you can approach it from a place of play if you can just sort of let go of the story or the narrative of I have to, or people will judge me, or this or that or whatever. So that's the stuff to work on, is those attachments. So
and to be gentle with yourself, because those are survival modes that we're primed to exist from, to get the bills paid, but I have kids. And there's a businessman who came up to me after a talk and he's like, but Jenna, I can't be. I have stuff to do. Like, okay. It's a bigger conversation, but you can't get to being from doing alone, but you can definitely do from being. And so it's a 2-for-1 special. Like you get to be and do and be connected and online as you're doing the doing. So it's an informed, more resourceful state. And if you're doing anyway alone, might as well add being, because it's more fun. Like, I mean, you're going to live
and
that
connects us to the human animal. Remember, the being and doing is all one thing. So that's where we get to be authentic again, when our doing is connected to our being.
You are authentic. You can't manufacture authenticity. I watch people being, I'm just being authentic. I'm like, no, but like, you know what I mean? If you're
doing authentic.
I'm like that. No, but we've been trained to be mind dominant, be gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
If you start to learn how to listen, I would say, I'd leave the listeners with, sit down with a pen and paper. I love actually writing. Don't use your phone. What do I want more of? And what do I want less of? And just start to see what arises. Don't think about it too much before. Let the answers arise. And that'll start to just show you like, oh, I want less this, or I really want this. And now you're starting to relate to yourself.
Yeah.
and you're seeing it. And so that's a good exercise to leave people with, that they can start to apply some of this.
Okay. So on our next talk, then we're going to deal with presence, and then two other things you just said. I want to talk about the distinction between wants and desires.
Cool.
I think that's a fun one to cover.
Writing it down. Okay.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the most important conversations on relationships with Jenna and myself. We're looking forward to seeing you guys again. And we're going to talk about presence and wants and desires and all kinds of other things, and always relating it back to relationships, both your relationship to yourself and to others in romantic relationships. That's kind of the focus that we're focusing on. So, all right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.
That concludes this episode of The Most Important Conversations. This in-depth conversation could set you on the path to self-improvement, which is essential if you want to be an effective leader and take meaningful action in your life. If you enjoyed this episode and want more of these stimulating discussions, you can find them at TMICglobal.com. Remember, the world is at a crossroads right now. You can't afford to waste this opportunity to take charge of your life, build meaningful relationships with others, and co-create a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.